Yes, our next speaker is now ready. He's from Sweden, Swedish Rural Network. Eesti keelde siis Rootsi maavõrgustik. Härra Hans-Olof Ståhlgren. Okay. I'm not fluent in Swedish, so I'm doing small mistakes. But kõne on siis teemal multifondide plussid ja miinused Rootsi rannakalanduses. Pluses and minuses of multifunds in Swedish fishery industries. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. And thank you for inviting me here. I really appreciate to be able to be here. And I've been working quite a lot with contacts around the Baltic Sea region and with the flags and other things. So I really enjoy to be around in the countries in the Baltic Sea region and foster cooperation and joint learning and so on. I was listening to several of what you said, both in the beginning and now from Jill, about the coastal fishing communities. And for sure, there are obstacles, there are hurdles. We have been touching about the seals and cormorants as one of the problems in the Baltic Sea region. But actually, we asked some students from the University of Agriculture in Sweden and said, could you go to 4 different coastal fishery communities and make interviews about how they perceive the situation now and the future and so on. And it was really interesting. Of course, this was not scientific. It was students. And they were not from fishing communities and didn't have history at all. But we asked them, please, just go around, ask fishermen, ask restaurants, ask tourism entrepreneurs, or ask the shop or the villagers and so on. 3 of the communities were in the Baltic Sea region, and the coastline, the east coast of Sweden, and 1 was the west coast. And when they came back, they said from all the 3 communities on the east coast, the answer was to the question, what does fishing and coastal fishing mean for you? The answer was, we don't have any coastal fishing, almost. But the fishing is really important for our community. The fishing culture, the attraction of our community, because we have this history, the products, and so on. It's so important. But to be honest, we don't have so many full-time or half-time fishermen. And that's really sad. So I realized that there are obstacles and there are hurdles to be overcome. On the west coast, it was a living, thriving community with different kinds of shellfish and shrimp fishing and so on. And there the fishing was, well, it's the backbone and it's the total life of our community. It was very, very different. So it was interesting. Not scientific, but still interesting. Well, I'm working at the Swedish Rural Network, and we are working both with the fishery communities and the flags and the leader lags. So I'm a colleague of ERCO because I'm working quite a lot with the fishery lags. But saying something about the CLLD or the flag approach in Sweden, we have this multi-funding solution. So when I'm speaking now, sometimes I'm saying lags, sometimes flags, sometimes leader areas, because for us all the areas are leader areas. They are using the leader method. Some of them are single funded from the Maritime and Fisheries Fund. Many are from different funds and so on. So the approach that we have is that when the leader groups applied to be leader groups and they were making their local development strategies, they were offered the opportunity to apply for funding from all the 4 funds. The Rural Development Fund, the Maritime and Fisheries Fund, the regional fund, and the social fund. To make it a little bit simple, more simple, there was a special operational program designed for CLLD, or the leader method, through the social fund and regional fund. So from that, the big national program for social fund and regional fund, a portion was taken away, saying this is for the CLLD, or the leader method. And then there was a special operational program made for that. And it was also arranged that we have the same managing authority for all these programs, all the funds for CLLD, and the same paying agency, making it a little bit more easy. And it's also so that the lead fund, the biggest fund in a leader area, they take all the administrative costs, all the running costs for the lag office and so on. That is more or less the system. And here we have a map of the Swedish areas with funding from the Maritime and Fisheries Fund. And as you see, there are 4 that are just single funded with the Maritime and Fisheries Fund. One of them is here. Where are you from? Yeah, there you are, from Tornedalen, Haparanda archipelago. The far north flag. And also there is one in Vindelälven, the river of Vindelälven, along the whole river. It's also single funded. And the 2 from, I can use this, but yeah, the 2 lakes, the big lakes, they're also single funded. The rest, they have 3 or 4 funds. And it was made a survey or kind of an analysis from the managing authority about the projects, the size of the projects, the total funding and so on for the projects until August 2018. So this is until 2018 August. And one kind of tendency found is that the 4, back again, there it is. The 4 single funded areas, the average size of funding for projects is a little bit higher than the average size for the multifunded. It seems like if you are only focusing on one fund, then you tend to have larger, more kind of very large or larger still projects. But this is only 82 projects in total. So drawing too much conclusions from this could be dangerous. But there is a tendency. And here you can see the number of projects in each of all the flags. And also the sum that they have approved in total for these projects. So it's quite large difference. This area on the west coast of Sweden, they have 14 different projects until August. And there are one with 2 and so on. So there is a large variation of that. And also, since it has been a slow start of the program and of the flags, most of the projects, they will end maybe this year or even later on, next year or even later. So then it's difficult to make any conclusions exactly how is it working, what are the results, what are the effects and so on. It has to be analyzed later on. But there is a strong link, and as you said, Jill, a strong link between community development and coastal fisheries in most of the flags. So 11 of the flags in their strategies, they are focusing on coastal community development linked to small-scale coastal fisheries. And of these 82 projects that were in this survey, 24 of them are directly about community development linked to coastal fishing. There is also a variation according to if you have projects aiming at business development and new businesses or not. There are some flags that have no projects at all linked with business development, and other flags which have over half of their number of projects, 60%, or Tornedalen, 30% new businesses. But of course, if you have 3 projects and one of them is about business development, then you come to 30%. So it's a small number of projects still. So then we asked all the Swedish leader groups about how do you perceive this multi-funding solution. 41 of them answered, and they were quite positive, most of them. And of course, one of the main issues is that the lead fund, mostly the Rural Development Fund, they pay for all the running costs, and in that way you can use if you have the Maritime and Fisheries Fund, all that funding for projects and nothing for running costs, because it's covered by the biggest fund. And that was a very positive thing, most of the lags said. They also felt, and actually they said, we have managed to attract new actors in this community development, this leader approach. We didn't cooperate so much with all the other actors in regional development before, and now we have managed to do that. So we can have a wider perspective in what is our part of regional development. And we have a better flexibility for different kinds of projects. Before we said, oh, this is not rural development or this is not fisheries, so we cannot approve this. You have to go to someone else. Now we can be more flexible. We can have a wider portfolio of projects. We can cover the whole geographical area now. Before we were not, it was not possible to have anything to do in urban centers. But now, since we have those other funds, we can also have activities there. And for our municipalities that are members in our leader area, they are working with their whole municipality. And now we can deal with all the different needs of the municipality. So it makes it easier to work with our municipalities. It has been tricky with the social fund, but still it also opens new opportunities for the leader method. Some answered. We can also work with a pre-study for a project could be funded from one fund, and then the real project from another fund. We can follow the process, and that's really good. And we have this wider perspective on local development. So it looks quite positive, but of course there are negative things of this. There are different rules and regulations in different funds. And even if you have one managing authority or one paying agency, there are still different rules. And that's complicated for the office and also for the applicants. There is a very small funding from the Regional Development Fund and from the Social Fund compared to the other two funds. So why bother? There is an added administration with dealing with lots of funds. So why have that when the total amount of funding is so small? That is one negative way or comment for this. to fit in the social fund into the leader approach has been a little bit difficult in the start. Now it is going better, but since the leader approach is about gathering all the actors, all the three partners in the partnership, and anchoring with different actors, and the social fund is to bring individuals closer to the labor market. It is a little bit tricky. You were working before with just the group of people, organizations and so on, and now you're working with individuals. That has been a little bit tricky to how to apply the leader method in this. But so in the beginning there were no social fund projects, but now it's gaining pace. And of course, if you are concentrated in one fund, you can be more focused in your strategy and working only with that. So the strategy, the development strategy, will become a little bit more fragmented if you're dealing with lots of funds. And I called some of the flag managers asking questions about this. And one of them said that I'm not so much in favor of this multifunding. But when we spoke, it was more about the history of the area than the multifunding in itself. Because they had a functioning fishery flag in the last program period. And they wanted to continue, but they were forced to, the authorities said that you have to merge with the leader area and you have to be a multifund area. And they have not managed to get together because the fisheries, the fishery community, and also some of the authorities in the fisheries, they wanted to continue focusing on fishery. Why bother with all this community development and all the other things? We wanted to work with fishery, and it was working so well. And in that way, it has been difficult for them to be a multifunding area. So it was more about the history. But I talked with another manager, and he said the opposite. We had a very well-functioning cooperation with a flag in the former program period. And now we have merged, and it's working really well for us. So, for instance, we have a project now where we are investigating the possibility to recreate the salmon migrating in quite a small river, but still important in that area, a river going up to a city, our major city. So we're trying to find out where are the spawning grounds, can we create new spawning grounds, where are the obstacles, can we take away the obstacles for the migration of the salmon. And that is from one fund. And then there is an interest in the city to create tourism because they are expecting salmon to migrate up, and both fishing tourism and food and restaurants and so on. So they will add a project to that. We can see we are creating some kind of a process of different projects. So he was very, very positive of the opportunities that were given now with the multifunding. So it is pros and cons, as always. There is, of course, only possible to have one fund for each project. And that can be tricky because a large community development project, including fishery, including training, including investments in land, including tourism, it could be divided into several different sources of funding. Some claim that it would be nice to have just one big bag and get money from all the funds, and then we can distribute them. But that's not possible. You have to decide. This project is from that fund. Either you divide in several projects, adding more administration, or you try to use one fund for the whole. And another thing that is both positive and negative. If you are multifunded, it requires larger and more competence in your decision-making body, in your lag. A requirement, for instance, if you are multifunded with the fisheries fund, is to secure and show that you have competence in fishing and aquaculture in your lag. Most lags, they have a special preparation committee for the fisheries applications, and also people then in the lag with this competence, but a larger committee preparing the applications and evaluating them, giving advice to the decision-making body. And this can also be positive. One of the managers I talked to yesterday said that this is actually educating the whole lag, because people that are not into fishing, they get to learn quite a lot about fishing now. And the fishing community get to know much more about community development. So it creates a local competence and knowledge. So increases our knowledge of local development. So it's both positive and negative. We asked also, I think this is the final slide, have you managed to get new cooperation with other actors? Like, are you talking with the regional officers for the social fund much more now? Do you have meetings with the regional development fund people? And so on. And quite many said no, because maybe they had it before also, or they are working more on their own. But still, almost 1/3 said yes, there are new kinds of contacts now. We have a wider context. We are meeting with the other actors in regional and local development. And the coordination of funding is easier, because we all see the common picture, the whole picture. And we have one part of the jigsaw puzzle, and the others have other parts. But together we have a picture now of how to develop our region or our local community. So that was what we regard as a positive outcome as well. So, thank you. And I am happy to not to answer your questions maybe, but if you have questions, of course, you're welcome. If I can answer, or if I have to pass them on somewhere, it depends. But please, Erkko.
Jill talked about the delivery system, and there are good examples and maybe not so good examples. Can you tell us how much average time will take to get funding for the project, approval in Swedish case?
There is a promise that it should be handled within 3 months. That's the goal. From both the flag and the managing authority. I think we are coming closer to that goal, but still it's like maybe 4 or 5 months. But it has been longer in the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I need my headset for translation.
Multifondide rakendamise üks argument on olnud see, et see aitab hoida kokku halduskulusid. Teie kogemus, kas siis aitab kokku hoida halduskulusid?
Yes and no. Of course, it adds administrative costs in a lag if you have more than one fund, because you have to keep track on all the regulations and rules of the different funds and so on. On the other hand, if you have a community development, some people have ideas of fishery, some about tourism, some about local community halls, some about training and so on. And you have to know the administration for that. That is in that body, and administration for that is in the other body. Maybe it adds up to more administrative costs if you look at the whole picture. But in a single flag, if you have a multi-funding, of course it adds if you have to keep track on different funds. It's easier if you have one fund, but then you have a smaller amount of, or a smaller perspective of the kinds of projects you can approve. Does it make sense?
ennem kui ma annan Kilsile lihtsalt meeldetuletused, kes parasjagu ei küsi küsimust, siis täitke neid postiteid. Toomas ütles, et ennem ruumist välja ei saa, kui on seal tahvli peale paigutatud vastavalt roheline ja punane postit, siis positiivse ja negatiivse omadussõnaga, mis iseloomustab rannakalandust 10 aasta pärast. Aga ma annan kommentsiks.
Thank you, Hans-Olof, for introducing us to the multi-fund world. One question I have for you. You mentioned that one of the pros is actually to use the lead fund for the administration, saving then the money of the other funds for implementing project. The question I have is whether the lead fund is also then, the money of the lead fund is also used for animation purposes? And if yes, then how do you ensure that? Because animation is one of the usually the activities that the flags don't have enough resource for. Most of their basically running costs is eaten away by administration, not animation, and they have to use the same budget for animation. So if the lead fund is used for running costs and animation, how do you ensure that there is not enough animation budgets available for catering for the different needs of the different communities that have to basically implement the local development strategy? And my second question as well is that you mentioned average size of budget. Well, what struck me overall is that overall the average size of project is quite high. It's above 500,000 euro on average for each project.
That was Swedish crowns.
Kronos. All right. Okay, good. I thought it was euros. Okay, good. Then you've answered.
Divide with 10.
Okay,
Divide
good.
with 10.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm reassured. Okay, thank you. Then only one question.
Okay. I should have said that it was Swedish crowns, but I forgot it. Well, I'm not quite sure to how to ensure that there are enough money for animation. Actually, I think it's about the amount of working time, because that's very often the managers, they are complaining all over on all the lags that we don't have time for the animation. Actually, some people say, I was employed to do animation mostly, but I find myself working 90% of my time with administration. So I think there is enough money for it, but there are not enough working resources, unfortunately. And how to ensure that there are enough for all the different needs according to all the different funds, it's very difficult to say how to do that. And that administration is not due to the multi-funding solution, because even people with only the Rural Development Fund or only some other funds, they also complain. They don't have time. It's very much administration.
Thank you very much, Hans-Olof, for his pros and cons bringing out. I like to go back for the starting point. The 4 flags managing as a mana fund, and the other flags are managing multi-fund principles. And why it was decided that these 4 implementing only EMFF, and who made this decision?
That was made by the lags themselves. When they designed their local development strategy, they decided, let's go just for this fund, because we are like Vindelälven. It's only the river, it's only about migrating fish species and make that viable and so on. So they were concentrated on that and they designed their strategy, applying only for one fund. Other made other decisions saying, we need to work with these and these funds, all the 4 or only 3 and so on. Then of course it was an evaluation of the strategies. So maybe some that applied for 4 funds, they were allowed to have 3 or even 2, because it was a matter of how much money is there to divide and also the reasons in the strategy and quality of the strategy. But basically it was in the local development strategy.
Yes, thank you. Do you have a good example to bring to us or to tell to us? The issue is involvement of newcomers to this, let's say, this first group, sharing of information, and what part, if at all, local governments playing in this work on very beginning stage. I mean, sharing of information, newcomers, the possibility to come for some activity. Is it a close circle where the same players, same guys, same ladies playing the same game? And what is the role of local governments?
You mean newcomers, new actors in the local development?
Yes.
If I start with the importance of local governments, it's very, very close cooperation with the municipalities and the lag flags and so on. They are very much involved, since they are also funding quite a big part as well. So they have representatives in the lags, of course, and it's a very close cooperation also with the business development office of the municipality and the lags and flags and so on. So the role of the local governments and also the county administration, that is a little bit different, because sometimes there is a very good cooperation due to history also, because they were handling all the administration before. And in some other areas, there is not so close cooperation with the county administration. And then the new actors, that's interesting, because when we asked, how are you working together with these new actors you have found? It was a very wide variation. Some had frequently meetings, organized every second month or so, and meeting with all the representatives for social fund, county administration, regional fund, and so on. Some said, well, there are lots of meetings and occasionally we meet and then we discuss a lot. Others said, well, we call them when it's necessary and we call a little bit more often now. So it's very wide variation of that, the new actors. But still, most people pointed out that we are meeting other actors now than we made before. And that's a positive thing.
Thank you. On veel mõni küsimus? Keegi tõstis kätt? Kui ei, siis thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Teeme aplausi. And here is a small present from the organizers. Thanks a lot. Nüüd on lugu selline, et nüüd on meil lõuna kuni kella 3-ni. Ruumis saate välja siis, kui panete vastavalt rohelise ja punase postiti sinna selle tahvli peale, õige sõnaga. Tulge tagasi kindlasti kell 3 ja see lõuna on siit ümber nurga Senso restoranis, mis on Olümpia suur restoran, leiate kõik ülesse. 1,5 tundi või natuke üle on siis lõuna, aga tulge tähtaegselt tagasi, et siis saame õigel ajal alustada. Et ärge päris linna peale uitama minge, et aga aega on piisavalt, networkige ja tundke ennast mõnusalt. Ja kotid võite siia jätta, peale viimast pannakse uks lukku.